Hello and welcome to the Animation Industry Podcast. My name is Terry and I'm currently in the grueling process of migrating all of these chats, there's nearly 200 of them, to a brand new YouTube account focused solely on this podcast. Previously, I was just uploading them to my personal account because I didn't think I was going to do this podcast for very long. But here we are 5 years later, so I decided it's time to finally make an Animation Industry Podcast YouTube account. So if you listen to podcasts on YouTube, go and give it a sub maybe. This chat is with Liam Gilbey, and if you're a longtime listener of this podcast, you'll recognize him from episode 67 back in May 2020. Back then, Liam had just finished animation school and was starting an animation studio with a few of his friends. They were all roommates in the same house even together, and they all had day jobs. I believe Liam was working at a bowling alley to help kick things off the ground. So here we are nearly 3 years later with an update. In this chat, Liam, who is a director of the animation studio Cut the Mustard, which is based in Norwich, UK, is going to share everything that's happened since we last chatted. Where the studio's at today, how it got there, and where it's going. So without further ado, let's jump in. Liam, hello. How are you?
I'm good.
So this is a big update. We chatted 2 years ago in March 2020. And well, I don't know if we chatted in March 2020. That's just when I posted our episode because you know how these things go. But it's been 2 years. So I'm excited to find out, you know, at the time you were a very recent grad from Manchester University from the animation?
Norwich University.
Norwich University
Right.
in the animation program. You're starting a studio because you got a space in the school to like have a working space, and you like collaborated with your friends and ended up starting an animation studio. Here we are 2 years later. You're going to tell me all about how it's gone. You still have your studio. But first, I was thinking Manchester because the Manchester Film Festival.
Yes.
But first, you just pitched something at the Manchester Film Festival on the spot. Tell me about that experience. What did you pitch?
So I pitched for a feature film, which is probably not the advised thing to do straight out of the gate, but I had written something. I've written, oh God, in my spare time to do with Cut the Mustard. I write a good chunk of their stuff if I could. Sometimes we'll have clients that want me to write for them or whatnot, and I'll write some stuff. And I've always wanted to go into writing as kind of my personal direction. So I've written a number of kind of 11-minute pilots, 22-minute pilots, and then this feature film. And it was at the time what I thought was the strongest thing we had, and I got the chance to pitch for it, which is really exciting. I definitely think the next kind of, aside from or within our company, my personal ambition is very much to continue to pitch time and time again. You know how these things are, they're going to take hundreds of attempts. I hope to get 100 unsuccessful pitches. That's my aim. People say to aim for unsuccessful pitches because then rather than aim for one successful pitch, I want to fail 100 times. And I think that it's too early to know with what I pitched to the BBC. I think I'm allowed to say that I pitched to the BBC. That it went pretty well. Whether something will come of it, I'm not sure. But it was really, really cool to get in front of people and just explain a story that you'd written that you were really passionate in, and because you wrote the story and because you came up with the character designs, you know all the answers. That's the fun part, people, as a small business and as a new business, we might not always know everything about business, but I definitely know about my own films and my own projects and stuff like that. And being able to have somebody try and poke holes and ask questions about who it's for and what it's made for and thematically what it's about, and then be able to hit back time and time again with every single answer, that's an exciting prospect to me because, it all came from here. So that I do have all the answers, which is a very rare situation where anybody can say, oh, I have all the answers.
I'm impressed. So, okay, first of all, like 100 failed pitches, like Stephen King, 100 failed like rejections for one pitch, or
I would like
make 100 pitches and have one.
I would like to meet 100 pitches.
Oh my goodness.
In general, what happens of them, I don't know. Right now, one is the number. If I can go to more animation festivals across the UK, across Europe, like we went to Annecy a few years back, or just anywhere really, anyone that will listen I've got enough stories to whether it's the same one 100 times or whether it's 100 different ones, it doesn't matter. I feel like I've got enough content to really kind of.
Wow, that's like mind blowing to me, because I'm the opposite. I'm like, I'm gonna put all my effort into like three strong pitches that I absolutely believe in.
Yes.
But
Yeah, yeah,
your strategy is like, I have so many stories, just
yeah.
one will take off and it's okay.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Well, obviously, if somebody happens to like one, so I got some really good feedback from Manchester, I will continue to push down that avenue
Yeah.
until there is nothing more to give, and then move on, essentially.
Man, pitching is such an interesting thing, because you're the only advocate for it, and you just have to like rally other people to like it. And if you rally enough then it just happens, I guess. It's crazy. Okay. So, I have a lot of questions just based on what you said so far.
Mm.
So you had so you were just at first of all, why were you at the festival? Just as an attendee, or did you attend as, your studio, Cut the Mustard?
No, so the whole studio went, but we were all attendees. I don't think we're quite influential enough to get invited to the industry days just yet. But
Gotcha. So
yeah,
you didn't have a booth, you weren't recruiting, you're just
no,
like,
no,
we
no.
want to check out some cool animation and talk to
Yeah,
people.
we just wanted to see some films, really.
Nice.
As I discussed in the last call, and we had set up out of university. We had just graduated, and then COVID hit. Our nice new office that was owned by the uni, we were kicked out of because they needed more space for more computers. So we all worked from home for ages. So we've very much been quite isolated from the rest of the animation community, in person at least. And then in the last year, we've really tried to open that up. For instance, in Norwich, there's 7 or 8 different animation studios, all really small ones by kind of worldwide comparisons, but they do like a monthly meetup, and we go to all of those. We meet all of the animators, and then the other objective was to go to a festival, or festivals plural. And yeah, Manchester was where we went. It is probably the biggest one in the UK, I would say. I don't know if I'm trying to think if there's any bigger. I think it's the biggest one in the UK, at least for, I would say, for younger people to go to, because a lot of people get recruited there. Yeah, and then we went there. I had, on a whim, applied to pitch for something, and I hadn't heard back yes or no either way, so I presumed it was a no, because I was supposed to be given a time slot. I go there and they said, "You are pitching."
So they just
So
walk up to you and they're like, hey, glad you came.
yeah. No, I just went
So
straight
you
to.
had prepared something. It wasn't just
I had prepared something. I had
okay.
not prepared the right amount of stuff. I was told I was given 15 minutes. I was actually given 5. And I did manage to wrestle 15 minutes in the end by just chatting and
By just
staying.
talking. The
Yeah,
person's like, I thought we had 5 minutes, but
yeah,
I don't know how to cut off this
until
conversation.
they physically made me leave, which I yeah. Um but yeah, I got to pitch to the BBC. I got to pitch to Timeless Films, who do a lot of Sky's original filmmaking. They do a lot of distribution as well, which is really interesting to me, because I'd very much consider myself, and I don't really like this phrase, but a jack of all trades, because of the running a business, and because of wanting to get into writing and directing, and because we cover all aspects of the business as animators, and character designers, storyboarders, editors, whatever, compositors, and also knowing like the production, the finance, the all of that logistical side of things. It does make me relatively confident in pitching type scenarios, because somebody asks about, you know if they ask how much it's going to cost, I'm not going to be able to pull out a number out of thin air, but we have enough of the knowledge to be able to scale up the tiny films that we do now, that we're very proud of and are very great, but aren't feature length or even TV length in quality, or in length, or in style. But I am able to use the skill set that I have to kind of extrapolate those numbers and extrapolate that
Yeah,
time out of what we already have. It's a good blueprint for creating something like that, I think.
totally. Was this your first pitch ever?
Yes, yeah.
Ki-
Yeah, and I didn't actually know how it was going to be. I wasn't told whether it was going to be in front of a big group of people or just a few. It was just in front of the investors themselves. But I would have been fine either way. I feel like there's a kind of special little rule in my head that I would feel quite nervous to speak in front of a large group of people. But if it's about something that I'm so deeply passionate about, I'd be able to tell anybody and their mum, you know, whatever, because it's something I believe in. It's something I know in, like the back of my hand, really.
Nice, nice. Okay, question for you, because you know I've pitched a lot, and something that I've always thought about is like I'm just coming as a random Joe Blow. Like the studio has no idea who I am. I don't really have any big credits to my name. I'm not super experienced in the industry. Like the podcast is like the biggest credit to my name right now, I guess. So I'm just like, hi, it's me. I have a cool idea. Buy it, please. But like, I've always thought about like, what if I had, like if I came and I was like, you know, I'm backed by a whole production company with this idea. Like what is, do you have increased merit when you're like, hi, you know, I'm a representative of this studio and we've come up with, if you're pitching it that way, and you know, this is a feature film idea we're working on, we're looking for investors. Is that way more impressive to like the BBC, for instance, when they're like, oh, okay, we're talking to Liam from Cut the Mustard, and so this is an idea that has a studio backing already. Like this has more merit as an idea versus like Liam off the street.
Off the street. I yes, that's a fascinating question. I could go into that deeply, but of the very short time that I had for feedback with these people, I was given a kind of range of feedback. First of all, the way that people pitch for feature films and the way that people pitch for TV seem to be kind of different in different worlds almost. It was very much I pitched as a for myself with the backing of Cut the Mustard, and you know I got a range of feedback on how that could work. Do I want to sell the script? Just do I want to sell it and then just see it into the world? Do I want to write and direct it and find a production team distributor for it, or do I want to back myself with the production team? And obviously right now there's 4 of us. We did expand to 6 of us a while back, and I'll talk about that later, but obviously that's still too small a number to really run a TV show or a feature film or anything. We'd have to double, triple in size before that would even become a possibility. But there is a kind of they were impressed by the fact that there was a production team behind that who could potentially become, you know, the figureheads of this idea. A team that's been kind of incubating this idea for a while has the potential to become, you know, the head of storyboarding, the head of animation, the head of character design, whatever, and then trickle down that information to hire quicker rather than sell that to a team. But all of those things had pros and cons to them. You know, we still are shortly after forming, you know, 3 years is a long time, but in terms of business it's not that long. They still make a pretty humble living, and they said to you, well, you can sell it for £100,000, but that's not going to be very good for your career. But to me, £100,000 is like, you know, that's winning the lottery, of course. So you know, it depends on context and situation. And for me as well, they asked, you know, would you be interested in writing and directing? And obviously the answer to any animator is yes, but I definitely think that my skill set is stronger in writing than it is in directing.
Yeah.
I usually do a lot of the mainline animation rather than a lot of the pre-production stuff at work. Obviously we have a significant benefit or drawback, depending on how you see it, at Cut the Mustard, in that because we're small, I get to dip my toes in every single part of the animation pipeline, every single part of the kind of production side, the administrative side, the business side, and the creative side all the time, simultaneously, all day, every day, which can be either a dream or a nightmare, depending on who you are and who you ask. But yeah, I guess it's almost an impossible question to ask. Ask me when I've got 100 projections. And then I'll be able to tell you slightly better. Their number one advice perhaps was to take my feature film and edit it into a TV series, which was very interesting. And it wasn't because of the story that I told, because I really, really believe in the feature film script that I've written, but because I was pitching it as 2D. And the advice I got from both teams was that if you're pitching a feature film, pitch in 3D, and if you're pitching a TV series pitched in 2D, because I pitched it like Toon Boom rigged, you know, Rick and Morty, BoJack Horseman kind of,
Totally.
you know, levels of animation
Yeah.
with kind of some flares, but very much people moving, talking, action, and then repeat. Which is very interesting. I think it's a rather simplified view of the industry, but I think that the point that they were trying to get across is, if you are a newcomer, you stick within the simplified boundaries of what is kind of acceptable, what's allowed, what's,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
work
I mean,
within.
that's definitely interesting to me because, you know, animated feature films, 3D is where it's at, but there
Yeah.
is so much 2D that you don't really, that isn't like mainstream. You know, there's feature films that are in 2D that are going
Yes.
to straight to streaming, like Netflix
Mm.
or whatnot. So, you know, from pitching, I always have thoughts on advice like that. Like, I personally believe that you should, you know, create a story for a medium, or like choose the medium and have a reason behind it. So if, you know, your story, there's a reason that it's 2D and Toon Boom, I think you should stick with that. But if you're
Yeah.
like, this story is transferable, then I think going to 3D is fine.
Yeah,
You know,
it was really interesting. The one question that really threw me off, and I'm not very thrown off by a lot of questions, is they said to me, "Why is it a movie rather than a show?" And to me, that was like, it just, you know, structurally, the story fit better as a movie. But there's kind of, at least I haven't discovered it yet. There's not really an eloquent way to just say it fits better. But I definitely think, in terms of, that's the one question that threw me off for sure.
yeah,
I spoke to a couple of the panelists beforehand, and it was really interesting to speak to them. I spoke to a guy called JP, who's the director of the film Ron's Gone Wrong, which is a 3D animated feature that came out, I think, 2021. It's Locksmith's and DNEG's first feature film. And yeah, I went and spoke to him at the pub, and it was really interesting to hear what they wanted pitched and what they thought was good, especially as they had successfully pitched a film to, I believe, Fox at the time, before the Disney merger, and they had made it under that banner. Um, that was very much character, character, character. You know, we don't care, you know, what happens in Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. We just want to know where they start and where they stop. You know, he said to me, that, look at Ratatouille, you know, you've got this rat and he starts the movie stealing cookbooks and ingredients from the bins, and then he ends as owning his own, you know, restaurant, and he's a professional chef. And I guess that is the part they wanted to know, is this set of characters that I, or anybody pitching, had invented. Why should you care, and why does this story define them? Why have you chosen to start where you start, and why have you chosen to finish where you finish, whether it's a TV show or whatever? That is slightly different when it comes to like something like what we talk about, like Adventure Time, because they very much are static characters, but there's still, you know, inclinations of an arc in there. Whether it's more subtle or whether it's more obvious is kind of up to the type of show, really.
yeah, I love the pitch you gave for Ratatouille. It's a rat stealing cookbooks from the trash, and he ends up owning his own restaurant.
Yeah.
Like, that's just so simple. And it's,
Yeah.
from my experience in pitching, and what you said is so true. You know, the people who are making the financial decisions and development decisions, they're not typically creative. So they, you know, the art style, the nuances of the world, the jokes, like all that stuff, they're way more interested in character, because that's what they know and that's what they see as being successful. So you know, start with character is always like the biggest advice, and knowing, you know, why this story changes your character is like pivotal to your pitch. I think you also brought up something very interesting about the pitching experience that I've experienced as well. It's half about, you know, what is this idea, and it's half about who you are and where do you see yourself in the role. Like when I started pitching and people were like, "Oh, do you want to direct this? Do you want to showrun this?" Like, my answer to all that was like, yeah, but like, had I really thought about like where my skill set lies? Am I really an amazing writer? And am I really gonna like write this series, or am I gonna rely on a team of writers and say, you know what, that's not my strength. I'd love to work with somebody who's experienced in that. I'm more of like the director, or I'm more of the creative development, or I'm more of actually just an animator. Like, those are all super interesting and important things to think about when you're pitching too, because the idea like gets you in the door, I guess, or just interest. And then it's like who you are and what you brings personally. Like, are you just going to sell this idea to us and we'll take it and be like, great, here's your $1 million, your $100,000, goodbye. Versus like, oh, you are tied to this pitch. Who are you? Like, how do you, like, I don't know who you are, but like you somehow you're directing this show for the studio, like, you know. So wow, what an interesting experience. Congratulations on your first pitch. I think that's fantastic that you wrangled so much information out of so many people in such a short time.
I very much overstayed my welcome in the pitch, but I was going to take every piece of knowledge possible from them.
You're like, hello, sit down. It's me. Yeah. We're going to talk to this.
Well, luckily I had gone to go find the panel the day before anyway. But once I found out, I was kind of on a mad rush to go. There was like a social event at a nearby bar, and I went and found them. And luckily, because it's an animation social event, it's acceptable for me to approach other animators and ask for advice. Under any other circumstances, perhaps not. But yeah, it was good to be able to get as much information as possible, because I intend on doing this pretty regularly for the next however many years of my life, and I want to do it as best as possible.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, because like, you know, I just attended an animation conference in Toronto a couple of weeks ago. And like, even though I run this podcast, I talk to people all the time, I still find it intimidating and nerve-wracking to like talk to people in person and put myself out there and be like, hi, I'm Terry. Now I got to talk about something. And, you know, I like, how do you go from, oh, I'm watching some cute films at an animation festival to, oh my goodness, now I'm pushing myself to pitch and I have to get ready for this in 5 minutes and like, you know, do a good job. And like, because a lot of the times animators are introverted and feel nervous about this stuff. So how did you mentally get in that space where you felt comfortable, you know, being confident?
So, God, that's a big question. Animators definitely are introverts. I could tell you that from the social drinking events that we had at Manchester.
Like nobody's talking.
Yeah, I was trying to find people to speak to, but no, I found very nice people to speak to. But I guess in terms of like public speaking or stuff like that, everybody is going to care if it's good and if you're passionate about it and if you sell it right. And if you fail, no one is going to care. That's always the bit that kind of holds me onto it. I guess, you know, previously in a couple of years ago when we had the talk, we talked about mental health, and I'd done a couple of mental health talks at uni and stuff like that after we graduated. And very much in terms of public speaking, which I found, you know, everybody gets a little bit nervous, but I've found okay generally, is no, if you mess up, nobody cares. That's the number one thing. Like if you went and worst pitch of all time, the only thing you can take is the advice. I very much remember, and this is animation adjacent, but I was part of my school's debate team. It wasn't exactly a choice, but I was made to be on the debate team. And I went and did this terrible.
You weren't good at debating about being on the debate team beforehand.
I didn't. No, I didn't debate my way off of the debate team, unfortunately. But yeah, we did this debate at like a local court, and it was terrible. I did absolutely awful. I froze, and I, you know, all of my words I couldn't get out properly, and I kind of panicked. And then at the end, this guy who was like judging the event was like, he like pointed at me and was like, oh, you did really terribly today, and it made me feel awful. But then the next week I was talking about it with my friends at school and none of them remembered. And that's always the feeling that I've held on to. Like no one, the only one that ever holds on to it is you. So like I'd love to go and get up on stage and pitch my ideas wholeheartedly with complete sincerity and tell the jokes that I think are funny. And if nobody laughs, the only one that can learn from that is me. Everybody else is going to forget a bad joke or an idea that didn't work, or somebody that was too enthusiastic or not enthusiastic enough. All I can do is just go home the next week. Everybody's forgot. I'll do the same again, but better. And that's kind of the drive, isn't it? That's the, that gets
what a nightmare. You are nervous in front of everybody. You personally know you did a bad job, and then the judge at the end in front of everybody points at you and said you did terribly. Thank goodness nobody remembered, otherwise you like that's literally like a nightmare. Oh my goodness. But I like that mentality that you use that experience to learn from it. Be like, nobody's going to remember this. The only person that's going to improve is me. And I think, you know, like doing this 100 times myself,
I don't feel like it, like all of my pitches, I still get nervous beforehand, but I also kind of have the same mentality. Like, it's only 15 minutes, just get through it. You know, I did okay last time. They seem to laugh at this thing. They didn't remember this thing. Like, you know, just kind of mentally just pushing yourself to experience this, to build this, you know, like hardened personality. I don't know.
Yes.
Wow. Oh my
Absolutely.
goodness. What an experience. Thanks for sharing all your pitching stuff. And, you know, I hope this is pitch number 1. You don't have to go to 100 and it's successful. That would be amazing. So let's talk about, you know, Cut the Mustard. So just to give some background, you graduated, you got a co-working space at school to start the studio. COVID hit, school canceled your space. And then you and a small group of friends were living in the same house together, I believe.
Yes.
And using animation jobs to pay the rent and starting a studio together. So fast forward 2 years, you're still doing this. Explain your situation now. Like, take a snapshot of Cut the Mustard right now. Are you still all living in the same house? Is it still?
We are not all still living in the same house, thank goodness. That's but it's getting out of working from home is one thing. Taking the phrase working from home quite literally is another. We moved into another studio, another office last October, and we've been there over a year now, and it's beautiful. It's really nice. We've got a great look over the city, and it's bigger, so we've managed to have enough space for potential extra people. When COVID lockdowns were going away, the UK had some funding for something called Kickstart, which was to get 6 months paid for a number of employees to come and work for you, basically, to get people back into work after COVID. So we received funding for 2 people for 6 months.
Wow.
I had to battle with the government endlessly on it to get us done. They said it would take 3 weeks to apply. It took us 9 months to get through the process. I had to contact them like every day. But in January this year, we picked up George and Kai, who are 2 of our new employees, who have on and off stuck around with us, both fantastic, amazing artists, great parts of the team. It's really nice to have other employees as well. I think the 4 of us at Cut the Mustard had begun to know each other so well that some days we just wouldn't talk to each other. We've all become like some sort of weird hive mind. So it was definitely nice to have not just new faces and new conversation, but it was amazing to have new styles, because as a company, we've very much not tied down ourselves to like a company style by design. It's really fun, certainly difficult, and perhaps we would have an easier time if we did just commit to the same thing every time, but that's not art, and that's not animation. That's not as we see it. Obviously we have our specialties and we have things that we're more likely to do than something else, but to be able to expand our pool of styles that we can offer is really, really cool, because it means often we'll play different roles in different projects on the team. So if, you know, we got George on the team and one of the clients really, really liked his stuff, he would be project leading that rather than some sort of traditional hierarchy, which obviously has its own benefits. But being able to kind of lead through art rather than lead through art and lead through skill set rather than leading through a more rigid system, it leaves us a lot of kind of creativity to play around with new stuff and make new films and make new
So it sounds like you're more of a collaborative team rather than like a structured business where you have the owner and the studio director and the art director and then the animators.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's some stuff, especially when it comes to the logistical side of things, there are jobs that people have. But even that side has become looser in the last 6 months or so. It was definitely like there was a period of time where I would run all communications with everybody. I would be the client communicator, and, you know, keep everybody in the loop. But we kind of reached a level of critical mass where I couldn't keep up with everybody. And we found that people just like people at the end of the day, whether you're a big corporation or a small local business, people like that interpersonal connection. So we end up now, all of us run production in our own kind of way, for different projects, and we all kind of work around in a kind of it sounds like a mess, but a kind of circular system.
Yeah.
And I think that definitely works, especially for our clients as well. They really like to know that the person you are communicating with knows the project like the back of their hand. They are invested in it. They want to see it through, all of that stuff. And not that that stuff was never true with me doing all of it, but there was a certain period of time where, because I was doing all of it, I, it's email this, speak to that person, call with this person, feedback from that person, and then suddenly it all kind of becomes a bit, it washes over you a bit. It's much nicer to be able to say, this is what I'm going to be looking after for the next 2.5 months, and I'm going to see it through in the best way possible for the budget that you've given, and really treat it like it's art rather than business, because it's so easy to confuse the two. And we've very, very much been riding the line. We want to be a successful company, we all want to make good money and go home and live in nice houses and drive nice cars or whatever, but at the same time, it's about having a workload that is sustainable, that is inspiring, that challenges you, that makes you better, that makes you actually want to turn up in the morning and go to work. That's the important stuff as well.
How many people is your studio now? How many people you just hired to? It's yourself and also.
So we're back down to 4 now for Christmas. 4.5, given that we have Jake, who makes all of our music, but he's not always around. He works on freelance basically. And then at maximum, we've been 6.5 basically.
Wow.
And depending on freelance projects that happen, we might have more or less. We haven't expanded beyond 6. So it will begin to get to kind of logistical nightmare levels at that point, and we'll probably have to create a bit more structure. But right now, for what we do and for what we make, I think that makes sense. I don't think there's a plan really to expand dramatically beyond that. I'm pretty sure I said 2 years ago that I'd love to be a studio that had like 30-40 people or something, but I think as time goes on, your kind of priorities change. If I was working in TV and if I was working with movies and my pitches were going successfully, then perhaps yes. But right now, for what we have, I think that being able to kind of, I come into work every morning and I know what everybody's working on, and I'm personally invested in all of it. That feels good for me.
Yeah. So it's not like there's one person who's like in charge of everything and overseeing. It's more like, the person whose style, I'm just trying to understand, because like I know small companies, small studios that are 4 to 5 to 6 people as well, or even just like 1 or 2 people, and then they like hire up based on the jobs they get. But there's always a very clear art director. There's always a very clear person that handles all the communication. But it sounds like kind of whoever you're explaining to me, whoever's style kind of sells the project, they are taking the lead, with client communication, with art direction, and like project management. Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah. To a simplified degree. Yes.
Yeah.
There are obviously skill sets that certain people have above others. So there'll be people that tend to do more producing than this, or more, I'll do a lot of communication still today, but I'll very much stick, if I can, within the projects that I have. It's kind of hard to explain, I guess. I've never really thought about it being a kind of odd system. But
I'm just wondering, like, if you have a repeat client, do they always talk to the same person, or is it like, is that confusing? Okay, because like part of me is wondering, there's a certain level of prestige, I guess, quote unquote, that studios or clients kind of look for when hiring a studio. They want like the super fancy, director. They want that like corporate experience, communication, etc. Have you found that has led you to get or not get jobs because of how you operate in this kind of like, collaborative, kind of like evolving hive, I guess?
Since we've become the evolving hive, we
rename your studio to Evolving Hive.
Yeah, we should. Since then, we've definitely found we've had more repeat work, because there's somebody had a vision, somebody communicated that vision with the client, somebody saw it through, they knew all the details, Not that we never didn't know the details, but somebody saw it through to the end and kept in touch with that client. As a smaller company, and to anybody listening that happens to make a company of their own, you'll find yourself working for either smaller businesses at the start, or you'll find yourself working for local businesses who want to work with somebody close to them, whether you meet them or not. We work for plenty of people around Norfolk here that we never actually meet in person, but they want to work with somebody local, just in case. You'll find that a lot of the businesses that you work for are people who are trying to get their own vision off the ground. They're trying to get their own business off the ground. Not all, that's not always the most steady income of work, because you don't always know what the client's going to do with the thing you've made, and they don't even know where they're going to go. So we definitely found it difficult because, you know, in the 2 years since we've spoken, we've worked for plenty more clients, but almost all of those up to a certain point had been one-time projects only. We had never been on a retainer. We'd never been a repeat client, because a lot of these people have an idea. We work with a lot of people that do, say, crowdfunding or kickstarts. They have that big plan. They want to go out there, and maybe it works out, maybe it doesn't work out, maybe it works out and they don't need any future animation because we've accomplished our mission. And we always, month by month, week by week, have to find new people.
Yeah.
But when we move to this kind of newer system, having that personal relationship with somebody definitely is something that holds people closer. They have trust in us, they have trust in the process, they have trust in the creative vision, because they know that the person they've been paired with is somebody with that same vision, or as close as to that vision as they do. And it's helped us keep in line with other people. Obviously, the easy thing to say would be, in a couple of years' time, perhaps we will be working with Google or Facebook or Nike or whatever, but they, you know, in terms of bigger companies that do have a constant stream of work, or do have budgets that reflect kind of the quality and style and length of the project that they want, those companies already have connections with other animation companies.
Totally,
So
yeah,
it's just about patience, really. It's about being able to utilize the strengths you've got, and for us, that those interpersonal connections, and then the rest of it is just patience. Just keep it relentless, continue again and again and again until it sticks, really. And that's that. We said that 2 years ago, we'll say that now, I'll say that in 2 years time still, really.
I have two questions based on what you just said. One is, what kind of, you know, I believe you were working at a bowling alley when we first chatted.
Yes.
to maintain income while starting a studio.
Yep.
So you've obviously moved out of the co-living space with your other animators. I don't know if you're still working at the bowling alley. You have your own space that you're living in now. What did it take to you know, sustain 4 to 6 people just with animation, starting as a new company, to the point of now? Like, like, how many clients did it take? Like 100 projects? Did it take like a couple big ones before you know, just one big one that you landed that enabled you to move here? Did it take so much work with getting grants from the government? Like, what was it that enabled you to be in the space you are now, with a successful company 2 years later, supporting 4 people?
Wow. Okay, big question. In terms of me, the answer was blind stupidity. I decided to quit my part-time job and just go for it. And then the others followed afterwards at a more sensible time. But for us, it was very much, you know, we do have a sense of rhythm and regular times, and even that sense of rhythm includes the times that we don't get a lot of work. So for instance, around Christmas, when everybody decides to stop, which we found is a bit of a pattern over the last 3 years. Understandably, it probably isn't most businesses, but yeah, it just took the right combination of things. So for us, and this really helped with those interpersonal relationships, one of our employees, Finn, made contact with some people at an organization called Rewriting Extinction, who do comics and art pieces in basically against climate change, with a bunch of famous artists. We worked with them. we continued to work with them relatively regularly, and that was for comics, which are really, really small things, but regular payments, which is something that we hadn't always had before. Beforehand, we'd had quite a lot of white whale type situations where it was a big chunk of money for a big investment of our time, and then perhaps nothing ever again. And we still chase those things because they're either for non-profit organizations or for environmental agencies or for the companies we really want to work for, or they're artistically very interesting and unique, and we think we can really mine something technically or creatively out of that. But alongside that work, we've been able to diversify in the types of things that we put out. And the comic stuff is really interesting because we not only worked for Rewriting Extinction, but then found ourselves working for almost all of the people that had made comics for Rewriting Extinction. And by Finn being able to mine into that world and into that community, he's been able to make his own connections like you would on, you know, LinkedIn or social media or anything, as something that he's naturally interested in.
With the comics things you're talking about, those are like the stuff you've done with like War and Peas, where you're like animating a comic for social media.
Yep.
So okay, so random question about this. I forget what was the guy's name that made the connection?
Finn.
Finn. So when Finn is going to look for work, he could just be like, oh, I got this for myself and I'm just going to like animate these things by myself because they're like project manageable by myself. But he's going as a representative of Cut the Mustard and bringing in the projects to the team.
Yes.
And then was there a demand for turning static comics into animation, or he kind of like pitched this idea and they liked it and then that led to more work?
A bit of both, I guess. It's kind of a happy accident, I guess, in terms of the demand met the pitch, and we made something nice for somebody once, and then that became making nice for somebody 10 times, and then there was suddenly a demand for much higher levels of stuff. And we've done that with quite a few different businesses and quite a few different models of stuff. So like, for instance, you know, perhaps once we're more established, and I could continue to say this for the rest of the time really, but once we're more established, perhaps there is our original business model, which was to make short films for environmental companies with hand-drawn 2D. Perhaps there would be a constant enough stream of that to keep us going forever, but very much these days it's kind of a bunch of different stuff. There's quite a lot of stuff we don't showcase as well. We do quite a lot of stuff for like DJs and like DJ events that play like projection work in the background. That's always really fun, and we have people at the team that really like that culture and really like that kind of animation, so it was interesting for them to be able to go chase that stuff because it was something that they were personally interested in, and it was something that they were excited to represent for the company, just as Finn was excited to represent comics for the company, and just like we've been excited to represent environmental short films. So in a way, we all kind of spread in our own different directions and found the things that meant things to us. Whereas beforehand, we were very much like, it was a kind of 2-track thing where it would be, here's the work we want to do. Oh no, we can't find anybody to pay us. We'll go do all the work we don't want to do. And then we jump between the two sporadically. And we very much still, do work. No, there's no such thing as work we don't want to do, but like our not ideal kind of clients and stuff like that. But very much now being able to spread outwards has given us a chance to chase the things that matters to us, and not just the things that matter to us, but the things we know about. So for instance, we've done quite a few D&D related films. Amy, one at the team, she really likes her anime and she's very much into Dungeons and Dragons, and we've done quite a few Dungeons and Dragons related things because it's easy to talk about. So it's just like the same logic with the pitching. It's easy to talk about something you enjoy, something you're passionate about, something you want to do, and why not be able to make money out of that?
I absolutely love this idea, because like when you think of a studio, you think of like, business development, and that person is just bringing in whatever they can based on, the skill set and technology of the team. But you're saying that you've created this kind of like co-working evolution hive. Is that what I called it? Hive evolution? I don't know. Where everybody's like reaching out to stuff that specifically interests them and bringing them in, because everybody can speak to a different world. Like, you have one person talking about D&D, you have another person talking to DJs. And then when they bring that into the group, you all work on these like really cool projects where somebody heads that up and is super excited about it. That is so interesting to me. Because like something that I've kind of struggled thinking about is like at some point I want to studio myself, but I haven't figured out like exact business model where I'm still working on stuff that I really like while also bringing in a steady stream of things for other people to work on that I may not like. But joining other creative people where everybody's bringing in something that they're passionate about and then sharing the workload as a business sounds so interesting. I almost think that you probably won't grow if you keep this business model. It doesn't make sense to grow to a team of 30 people unless you stay as like a team of like just art directors that hire free like animators to execute your stuff.
Yeah.
So I think it's also interesting the evolution you've been through where you're like trying to get these big whale clients and then not, and then working on stuff you didn't want to work through. And it's been 2 years of a process to reach this point that it sounds like you've just kind of recently leaned into. Are all of you completely full-time in this animation studio now, or do you also still have part-time jobs somewhere else?
So on a technical level, we're all full-time. 2 of them work part-time jobs, but only for the benefits of those part-time jobs. Like one of the girls, she
You mean
works
extra money?
yeah, no, not necessarily extra money even anymore, but one of the girls, she works at like a local music venue and she gets all the gigs there for free.
Oh,
So
I see.
but yeah, I guess perhaps on a, yeah, who knows? I mean, that's up to them really. But I make, myself and Finn, we make enough to support ourselves with a
Well, that's
humble,
it. That's incredible. Congratulations. It
Thank you
took
very much.
2 years of quite the ups and downs, I know. But how do you feel right in this moment with, where you've come from discovering animation to, going through schooling, deciding to make this a business, and now like sitting in your own place talking on a podcast about your experience and being full-time as an animator at your own studio?
Well, it's fantastic. I think that sometimes you can get a little wrapped up in the objective, like I want something to be better. And I think perhaps 2 years ago I was talking a lot on the podcast about where we were going to be, what we were going to do. And obviously, pitching stuff is all about what you want to do. But these days I think it's perhaps, for me at least personally, more about the enjoyment of what you're doing. And not that work has to be like ear to ear beaming enjoyment because it's work and it's the industry, but I do enjoy it and I do like working for it and I enjoy the challenge. And running a company has always been a dream of mine, and I very much kind of saw it through. In terms of stuff like this, people on podcasts, or not even animation related, I listen to like people talk about business or business books or stuff like that. People talk about like plans, and you write a big plan and the plan is well researched and you execute that plan over a 5-10 year period. But I don't think that's quite the reality of life. We didn't become a company that growed outwards for our own benefit because of some sort of plan that we'd come up with. You do it because it's the thing you do every single day. And when you have enough power to influence the company you work for, it ends up shaping itself in whatever odd shape it takes. Because at the end of the day, we all see each other every day. We have done for the last 6 years. And we are going to continue to work like this for a long period of time, fingers crossed. And it's not so much about going, well, if I just put up with it today, or if I just put up with it for the next 5 years, I'll make a decent, great living and I'll make loads of money. Or if I just keep doing this, I'll just, be famous and be a showrunner of something. It's about the process, I think. It's about enjoying the process and enjoying the way and finding a way to shape your environment that you're currently in into a situation that you enjoy. And I enjoy it immensely. I enjoyed pitching without any sort of you know, even without the feedback, or without, if they never reached back out to me and said yes or no, that wouldn't really matter. If I didn't enjoy it, if I didn't enjoy the act of it, whether that's animating or running a business or pitching or any of these things, then there's no point to any of it, really. I know it's a
Yeah.
bit philosophical for animation industry podcast, but yeah, it's yeah, I don't know. I enjoy it, and that is the most important thing beyond what I'm going to be or what I'm not going to be. It's about the act of doing it, because this is it every day. So might as well enjoy it, right?
So it feels enjoyable.
Yes,
Is
that was
is that the
the long answer to a short question. It feels enjoyable.
yeah.
Yes, I enjoy the
Nice.
challenge.
Yeah, wow. Oh my goodness. It's so interesting for me to like, because I've sporadically checked into your website and your work over the years and just seeing, and we've checked into, it's so interesting to me to see how much you've evolved just in 2 years. I think for most people starting out in the industry, when they first start, they experience the most change, and then they reach a state where they're like happy and it's steady for a while, and they kind of stay in that good place. Do you feel like you've reached that good place where like you can keep operating like this for the next 5-10 years before you're going to be yearning for another massive change? Or do you still feel that like you have a lot to grow? Because like from my perspective, you've gotten steady work, you've tapped into multiple markets, you have you're able to get clients, and you are now living on your own, supporting yourself through this thing that you did. So is this kind of like a steady place for you now?
I guess so. I kind of, you I'm gonna like, if you spoke to me, not even in 2 years, if we spoke again in 6 months, I guarantee things would be
Yeah.
different in their own way. Not drastically so, because I guess, you take time out of the equation, and then 2 years is going to be bigger change than 6 months. But yeah, I think it does just shift naturally. It's like nature, I guess. It's just kind of, things move without you noticing, and then you think, well, people think every single day feels the same, and then you look back and everything's changed.
Yeah.
That's kind of the mentality. And even if we were a more traditional company, with a more traditional leadership structure, and when it comes to like stuff like money and business and stuff, there is a kind of structure in place. But um I still think that the company, and its values and our clients and how we work would just shift naturally, because we always get better, we always get faster, and we always find new ways to do the things we love in more interesting ways, or find new ways to do more things we love more often.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether I can never say, I don't know if in life I'll ever be able to say I'm on the straight and narrow and this is it, and we'll lock it in like this, because I don't think that's how I operate. But perhaps it will just continue to shift until the end of time, really.
Fair. Let me ask you this. It was a question I was meaning to ask you before, and when I was like, there's two questions anyways. How are you getting new clients? Because you said that most projects have been kind of one time, except for some recurring things. So when you personally are reaching out in the like environmental or nonprofit space, because other people are reaching out in the DJ world, whatever, how are you connecting with people who have money that need animation work, and what are you saying?
Good question. So we recently did a business course as part of that our local council was offering, and it was interesting to hear
Ooh.
them talk about it, because they have all sorts of sorry, someone up there. They have lots of different businesses of different kinds, business to business. They sell products, they sell services, whatever. Animation's interesting because you don't just, a long time ago, we ran a project, probably shortly after we spoke to you on the podcast, we ran a project where we got some money from the government, and we put that money into marketing, and we marketed on social media. Anybody, basically anyone want any animation, come to us, basically. And we tried to target that marketing specifically to the right age group and demographic of the people that we thought would be running the companies that we would want to work with. But knowing what we know now, that's all wrong. Basically, that is all completely wrong. People do not just wake up one day and want animation, because you're looking at stuff that's like going to cost, you know, £5,000-10,000. People don't just do that on a whim. You cannot be convinced to do that. You know, that's why, you know, car dealerships don't try and advertise to random people, oh, do you want to buy a car? Because people don't just wake up and decide they want to buy a car. They come to the dealership to buy the car. And you know, a car dealership is easy. You can put it on the side of a street. But for us, we're digital. We don't have we do have a home office, but we don't have like a storefront, and people wouldn't just walk into the store to say, hello, what do you offer? It's about getting yourself in as many places as possible. And SEO is a big one for us in trying to work out how we can best spread across the internet. And I try and write as many blog posts as I physically can, and try and, you know, collaborate with people or write on LinkedIn or anything like that. But in other terms, you want to find the people that are asking. People ask for animation. People say, I want to make an animation, because 99% of the population don't generally want an animation every other week. They're going to ask once, and they're going to probably ask online because they don't know who else to ask, because it's not exactly a word of mouth type thing. So then you've got this kind of, this person, there's, you know, one in a, you know, one a day out of everybody that potentially is in the right place of the world doing this right type of animation as us, that wants something that we can do. And you've got to find them. How do you find them on the internet? Because it's a ridiculously big place. Well, it turns out most people are not lazy, but lazy, and they'll just use social media. They'll just use their general social media that they want. Facebook is a lot of it. People will just say on Facebook, I would like to make an animation. I need to know someone that does that. Reddit is another one for me. I'm all over Reddit, finding people. And it's not necessarily about advertising, it's about finding. That's the way I described it.
So somebody on Reddit is just like, I need an animation done. Is there a specific subreddit that's been successful for you that you found this? Or are you just typing in the search bar, like, I need animation, and whatever comes up, you reach out to those people?
I just do like a ridiculous amount of keyword search, and most of it is completely diminishing returns. But, you know, in terms of finding that one, it's fine. Obviously, I would think that perhaps if there's a listener who is from a more established company, they're probably going, what the hell, that's an insane strategy. But, in terms of somebody that perhaps has worked in the industry for 20 years and knows the guy at Sony and knows the guy at Reebok and knows the guy from, you know, this restaurant chain or whatever, it's easier to say, got any animation? Or it's easier for somebody who has perhaps worked at 10 companies in 30 years to be able to reach out to the previous companies they work for and say, oh, well, you know, what have you got? Have you got any work? Do you have any things? And then you make connections that way.
So how did you get your last big project then? Like, was it through Reddit? Was it through Facebook?
Behance, which is exactly the same deal, because people want it. They post online that they are looking for people to find that. We had the portfolio that matched. That really is it. It's like dating almost. You're not about being the first in line. It's just about being the right match, I guess. Because, you know, we don't do 3D, we don't do stop motion, so that already cuts out 2 of the 3 types of animation. We don't do, you know, there's already half of the companies of the world probably already have a go-to connection that they're gonna speak to. Another part of the population are already going to be localized to a specific country, so they're going to want to go within their country. It's just about narrowing those fields down until you find the people that you find. And previously, we used to put in a real hard graft to win somebody over. But these days, we just kind of let the portfolio and the show reel speak for itself. If somebody's style matches the style that we have, then that's all it's going to take. And any extra convincing is either going to be a discredit to us, or it's just going to come across as desperate, really. So these days, it's just we push our CV across the table and we say, there you go, take a look, come back to us if you like it. And
yeah, that does make a ton of sense with your portfolio. This is super interesting to me. It also seems crazy, but it's I guess it makes sense because you're doing a very specific 2D kind of smaller scale. When I say small scale, you're not taking on like huge, advertising or TV, or you're doing small scale 2D animation with a tight knit group of people. That type of animation is perfect for people who don't have connections and are looking to make kind of, like you said, like Kickstarters or like D&D related or like comic related. So you kind of have to keep searching for those people because they don't know where to look and you have a hard time finding them. Gosh, wow. That's what an interesting niche. Did you ever envision yourself going into this niche? Because, I've talked to other studios and their startup years were making a connection with every agency in town and in the country, basically, so that, they're on the roster of lists that can do this, making big scale connections, working with, artists that have a lot of following and putting them on their list of directors to work with. But you're like, this is so specific and interesting. But it makes sense on how you're operating as well, because you only want to take on cool projects. Yeah, so I don't know, just maybe I don't even know what to ask. I probably asked 5 things in that spiel.
It's I guess with a little perspective, I guess it is different. I mean, obviously, because I've never worked at another animation company, I've done some internships at some games design companies, but that was it really. This is the way we work, and because there was nobody else to say otherwise, that's fine. Obviously,
nobody told you this doesn't work, so you're like, whatever.
So it's working basically. It's kind of a war of attrition, really. You just kind of do what you keep trying new things until you find a system that works. And the good thing about having a system that works that perhaps isn't quite the same as everybody else's is there's not too many competitors within that system. Obviously, if time goes on and we're able to pay enough that we can regularly go on creative tender sites and just pitch for stuff on tenders, or we can just work with agencies. Obviously, we're not going to say no to that if we can maintain the same kind of nice balance we've had before with with creative work and the stuff we enjoy and the stuff we really want to do and varied art styles, then that's fine by us. Whatever makes it work, we'll find the easiest way possible. But if that doesn't end up happening, we never work with agencies and we never do stuff. I can see a future where in 3-4 years time we have a regular string of clients and we don't have to look anymore because we found them all. We kept the relationships going endlessly in a kind of empathetic and honest way, and we just we have a pool of clients of the things that we enjoy the most, and that's also a success for us, really.
Yeah, I'm still kind of shocked at this strategy. So like, for instance, I'm part of a bunch of Facebook groups like amateur animators, professional animators, whatever, and quite often people will say, I have a need, just do a post. It'll just be a text post. Like, I'm looking for an animator to make a 5-minute short for my music video or for my wedding or something. And in the comments, there are always like 15 comments from like random animators from around the world who like, they're very new to animating as well. And I always think like, this person asking this question, they don't know anything about animation or what it's going to cost. So like, why even bother getting in touch with them? But you're saying that if you get in touch with these people, they have understanding and money. And are these the type of people you're getting in touch with?
And I'm in all those groups too.
I'll have to open the comments and see if you're commenting.
I'm always there. If it comes down to understanding, usually if you are blind applying for something, be as upfront and as quick as possible with how much it's going to cost and the expectations of time. That is, beforehand we used to kind of play this kind of cat and mouse game where we try and the joke of what's your budget, what's the quote, and it would kind of be back and forth. We'd waste a bunch of time. These days we do find a lot of work from blind applications because there is the risk, well, there's not even a risk, there is the high chance that they're going to be somebody that knows nothing about animation, doesn't have the budget for animation, doesn't understand how much it costs, doesn't understand how much time it takes. But if not, then there is a blank slate there of somebody who has the funds potentially and who has the means, and has no prior connections made to another. There's no pipe there.
Okay, interesting. I mean, that does make sense. And if you're just super upfront, like, you know, every once in a while, I just got an email this week actually from somebody saying, can you make a 5-minute stop motion for my wedding? And I was just upfront with her. I was like, well, 5 minutes is like, what's your budget? And she's like, tell me what the budget is. So I just listed out. I was like, well, it can cost you anywhere from 5,000 to 100,000, depending on like what you want, you know, characters, all this stuff. And then she just never responded. So like, that to me is a case of somebody being like, oh, what's it like? Because people have asked me, can you make this music video for $50? And it's like a 4-minute music video, and they want like Disney style, like, I'm like, what are you doing? No. But then there are the people that, you know, you do have a conversation with, and they do have the means in production, they understand. So that makes a lot of sense. Interesting.
We definitely found for a while, and this is a whole new point, but at this end of last year, start of this year, we were getting significant interest in us as a company to do NFT projects, and that was a whole different thing, because we are perfect for that. We're perfect for NFT trailer type things because we make original animations with original characters. We tend to not do stuff for like super duper corporate brands, and we do hand-drawn 2D. So lots of people suddenly went, my NFT project is the best thing in the world, and I want to, you know, Cartoon Network's going to finance it, and it's going to become a TV series. And we had loads of people throwing loads and loads and loads of money at us to do that, and we said no to most of that.
Wow.
Because, well, for a bunch of reasons. I had written a blog post at the end of 2021 of my predictions for the animation industry in the next year, and one of them was that the NFT market would completely implode by the end of the year, this year, which it has mostly. But that was a difficult thing for us to work out, because it's like there's all these people who are waving money in our faces to make stuff, and then we had to work out how we were going to navigate that, especially at the time when it was connected with really bad kind of reputation for how bad it was for the environment. And we'd been working with all these environmental agencies or like these nature organizations, and then to simultaneously be able to do a, you know, Save the Hedgehogs film and then an NFT project was
that makes, my question was, why not just take the money and be like, whatever, if it implodes? But it goes against your core competencies of what you're looking for.
it goes against our morals, I guess. That was the idea. We did do like NFT adjacent things. Basically, a lot of people tried to pay us. I'm sure a lot of small animation studios this year experienced the same, which is a lot of people trying to pay us in Bitcoin or Ethereum or stuff like that. And it was like, don't do that, and we're not going to do that for you, because people, you know, it's an art selling world. It's if I was going to sell art, there's no point commissioning an artist to sell it. We might as well have sold our own. It was like a whole thing, like it's like very weird, transparent exchange of money, because you know that the person is about to take what you've made for them and value it higher. Otherwise, they wouldn't have paid for it. So that was a whole thing. I can't remember how I even got onto that, but that was very much like we had been looking and looking. We always do a big search for all this stuff, and it gets easier and easier every day because we have more and more clients stick around and more people come to us naturally. And then suddenly all these NFT people came up to us, and we had the opportunity to really boost ourselves, and we said no. But I'm glad we did. I think had we followed that path, you know, the path of least resistance, I don't think it would have necessarily taken us to a better reality today. I don't think I would be speaking to you from a bigger house and fancier clothes and stuff like that, just because we'd done something else at the start of the year.
Wow, that's super interesting. Maybe as we're kind of, you know, I know we've been chatting a while. I don't want to take up your whole day, but maybe as we're wrapping up, let me ask you this. You know, 2 years in, going through all these ups and downs, figuring out, you know, what is the heart of your business, and even just talking about morals and the team, and growing your team, you know, what is something that you wish you did differently during all this, and what is something you're so happy you did this same? The same. You're so happy you did. Not the same. I don't know. If you were to do it over again, what would you do the same? What would you do different?
Yes.
Classic interview question.
It is a classic interview question, isn't it? The same is our I think there was a period of time where we could have said, hey, let's unify and just work as one art style and just commit to that for good. And I'm glad that we didn't. I'm glad that we stuck to lots of different ones. In terms of what we would do different, I mean, my joke answer would probably be don't all live together, but that was only a
I mean, is that a joke or is that not a joke?
No, only it was only really a problem because of the end of the world, I guess. But yeah, in terms of what I would do different is perhaps 2 years ago, other than this podcast that I'd done 2 years ago, we very, very much wanted to hide that we were young and that we were perhaps unprofessional because we just started. We wanted to present ourselves as professionally as possible, and therefore I think, presented ourselves in a more boring way than perhaps what we could have been. And these days, because we have spread out so far and because we all represent the company as people and we're people first, and clients really like that we are people first rather than some sort of faceless corporation, I think that we benefit from that now. And I think perhaps if I'd done it again, we wouldn't have been so afraid of being young and being new, because I think being afraid was worse than being either of those things.
I think that's super interesting. You know, I've received the exact opposite advice, as like, even some people, they even like they create an email and like fake have a receptionist that's just them with a different name that passes on the projects to the director who's them, because they want to appear so prestigious and like whatever. So yeah, I love that you're like, hey, we're just ourselves and we're just doing cool art and we're trying to make it as a business, and we take on projects that we like and we talk to the worlds we like. And it seems very much against all the traditionally run studios, but it makes sense for you guys, like with your morals and also like with just doing stuff you want to do and enjoying the process. I mean, if you're having to like fake who you are, then that's part of, unless you really enjoy, you know, being with the ego that comes with that, I guess. Like, I don't know, this is I'm really happy we chatted. This is a really cool space that you're in, and I'm glad that you're reaching a level of stability, and you also got that government grant to hire 2 new people, and you're doing this cool stuff.
So. I definitely think with being, what was I going to say, with being professional, or being, well, us being unprofessional, quote unquote, as our kind of business mentality, it comes back to one thing really. We were told by a business advisor who's very good a couple of years ago, 3 years ago, when we started the company in November 2019 or whatever. He said to us, you're not animators anymore, you are designers, because it's more professional, and you need to be known for your design skills, not for your art skills, because art is an unprofessional word. And I understand the logic in that entirely, but these days we flip the switch. We are storytellers and artists first, and being able to sell something subjective like story or like art, we often say to people, they have a message they want to tell, whether that's an advert, short story, music video, and we have the storytelling skills to bring it to life. And I think to convince somebody we have storytelling skills is often a harder job than design skills, because for a design website, you can just have all the logos of the biggest companies you've worked for right at the top and say, this is who we've designed for. They make lots of money, so therefore you'll make lots of money. But when we're not so much focused on design, but story, it's really come down to how we present ourselves as people, how we present ourselves as a company, and how we present our company culture, that comes down to saying this subjective word that gets used so often in society, storytelling, is what we are the best at, because we are the best at it, and that is the skill set we have above design, above marketing, whatever. It's to be able to turn somebody's message, idea, whatever, into a good story. And that is really comes down to it. You could boil down every single thing I've said today and kind of put that phrase on top of it, and it would work, because it's why we work the way we work. It's why we present ourselves the way we present. It's why I pitch the stories that I do and why I pitch them the way I do. It really comes down to being storytellers first and foremost, and I think that's something we'll continue to do, whatever shape the company takes in years to come. That's the angle we'll push for years to come.
Great. It's so exciting and satisfying to hear you talk about this with such confidence. Whereas in the start, you were really trying to figure out who you are, and just 2 years later and bringing yourselves through the ringer, you're clearly on a path of who you are, and now it's just getting work to fit in that space. As we're wrapping up, is there anything else you wanted to share for those listening who may have or may not have heard the first episode, or may not know who you are, or anything else?
No, not really. Just check out the website. Really, I've been keeping a pretty strong story. There it is again, story of who we are and what we've been up to, whether that's the work we do or what we've personally been up to on our blog. I'm pretty proud of it. It's not, you could scroll through and get a good idea. You don't even have to read it, of what we've been up to and what we've been doing and who we've been speaking to. And I think that really follows things. I'm going to be taking the kind of goings on of the company and really push that next year into some short form videos that I'll be sharing, of not just what we make, but how we do it, what we are, how we operate, and our kind of mentality, morals, all of that stuff into a kind of short form video series. That's my kind of big objective next year. So hopefully, if everything goes correctly, you shouldn't have to look, it will come to you.
Nice. That sounds great. That sounds really, I like that a lot. I'm just reflecting back that I like that. That's great. Well, thank you, Liam. Thank you so much for coming on again. I'm glad we reconnected. And it's super interesting for me to hear where you've come from and where you're going and where you are now. So it's been a pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you. It's been good to be on the podcast, and I'll be back again in 2 years.
Yeah, we'll check in every 2 years. If I'm still even running this podcast in 2 years, what the heck?
I'll be great.
Maybe I'll have a team running it for me.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And if you're listening and you want to check out, Cut the Mustard and Liam's work, and look out for that video series and check out the blog, you can do so by checking out cutthemustardanimation.com, and I'll include a link to that in the description of this chat. And that's all for now. So thank you so much for listening. Okay, bye.
The music for this podcast was composed by Will Farmer, and the graphics by Daniel Abensauer. I encourage you to look them up if you enjoyed their work.